Hi, I'm Rosa Lamosing. I'm a somatic-based whole life leadership and presence coach.
And I'm Ellen Palmer. I'm a regenerative leadership coach and strategic advisor for purpose-driven women. We're coaches.
And also friends. Welcome to the Presence Hour.
We have cleared this hour to become present to what is and invite you to join us in a lively conversation. We'll explore what is coming up for us and illustrate how cultivating presence can help us gain new insights, perspectives, and ways forward. Let's come together and take the mystery out of presence by getting ourselves there now.
Take a deep breath into your heart, and from here, we'll begin. Hi, welcome back, everyone. We wanted to start today with just unpacking a little bit that invitation to take a deep breath into your heart, because we know that's not maybe something that all of you are familiar with. So very simply, I'm going to invite you, just as we get into this episode, to just relax into wherever you're sitting or standing, or let yourself move with a little more ease, and orient to your breath for just a second. And as you do that, just imagine what it would feel like if the breath could actually come in and out through your heart center. You might even place your hand or just a couple fingers right on your heart and just notice that sensation. And without efforting, without pulling the air in, just allow it to sort of fall in with ease through that central channel in your heart. And if this is a challenge for you, maybe try to imagine what it might be like if you could do it. Just take a breath or two, orienting to your heart, feeling that space, settling in. And notice what's different now. And from here, we'll begin.
Oh, that felt so good. I'm noticing what's different in me, that I was, I'm excited to record this podcast and this episode. And it just totally brought me down. My heart rate slowed down. My breath slowed down. I feel like I'm just like more centered in my body.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed myself also, I kind of had a little bit of the more grounded, but I came into this episode feeling I've been a little bit feeling like I'm battling not becoming under the weather. And so I'm coming in a little low energy. And I noticed that as I allowed myself to sink in and really orient to being present with my body, that I became a little more energized and feel a little more alive now and ready to go. But in a settled, grounded place.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it helped bring me down and help bring you up. Isn't that so fun how a heart breath can do that? I just love it. So everyone joining us today, hello. Thank you for being here with us. I hope you enjoyed that. Or felt something new. It's not all about enjoyment. It's just exploration and curiosity. And what does that do for me? And that's why we're here, is to just explore things. We all have different experiences with it, as we just said. So that's awesome. And I just want to start, or right after this, I want to start with that if you're listening to this for the first time, that we suggest, since this is episode 2, to go back and listen to episode 1 first, because Rosa and I really introduce ourselves and how we know each other and what this podcast is about. We dig into presence. So you'll have a more well-rounded context for joining us in the future episodes of the Presence Hour podcast. So if you listen to episode 1, and then you can pick and choose your adventure from there. That's my recommendation.
I will second that.
Cool. I think, Rosa and I met before we turned on the camera to turned on the recording to be what do we want to talk about today? Where are we at? Where's Rosa at? Where am I at today? And I want to start by sharing that these conversations are unscripted. And that's part of the magic of presence, is that your life is unscripted. You're going to be in rooms and places where you are not prepared. Because I think I can speak for both of us on this one, that Rosa and I both like being prepared, kind of
Yes.
self-proclaimed recovering perfectionists.
Yep.
And that this is a practice for us and hopefully for you to how can presence like support you when things
Mhm.
are unscripted. So
Yeah.
we're just going to like start and see where things go and talk about like where we're at today and what's been going on with us and how presence, how it relates to presence.
Yeah. So I think along those lines, it's interesting to me that we had decided a little earlier in the week a topic that kind of came out of the first conversation that we wanted to expand on. And we were in agreement about that. And then coming into the session today, we both were noticing separately a little bit of resistance. And each of us, I think, as we started to share what's coming up for us, noticed that there were themes that were coming up. Not only, I noticed not only myself, but in several clients that I had spoken to this week and several friends that I had talked to about personal development type, issues. And Ellen, I think you reflected the same thing. And it was like, as soon as you shared with me, this is kind of what I'm seeing happening, I noticed my entire body just sort of relax down, expand, feel more spacious and ease. And I thought, oh, yeah, everything about the other topic felt intellectually like a good place to go. And
Mm-hmm.
I noticed by being present and cultivating this capacity to notice what's happening in my body that I noticed real clues from my body that this is the better place to go.
And so by both of us letting go of our plan and meeting ourselves where we're at today, like I'm hoping that we're going to have a richer conversation, right?
Yeah, I
Like
think
plans
so.
are great, but it's like what is really alive and present for us now is hopefully what is resonating with us and what's resonating with everyone who's listening right now, whether you're listening to this in the future or when.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, sometimes you like listen to just the right thing at the right time. Does that happen to
Yeah.
you?
It does. It happens a
Yeah.
lot. And I noticed that the more that I can trust that, even, this has been a real challenge for me, but this perfectionistic part of myself, I'm noticing that the more that I can just accept whatever shows up in this moment, even if it feels like a mistake, is probably what was needed for me to learn. And it's probably the thing that someone who is encountering it exactly what they need to feel like they have, I've noticed this with friends of mine when they put something out that is showing their vulnerable side. A lot of times they'll be like, oh my gosh, I thought that person was X, Y, or Z. Like they had their life so much more together. And I feel like this thing that I'm struggling with is more normal now because I'm seeing it reflected in someone that I really respect and admire.
Yeah.
So hopefully, even if, we stumble, that's real for where we are right now. And
Yeah.
that's the point of this, is to try to stay present with what is coming up with
Mm,
us and what we're encountering, and to then share that with all of you.
yeah. So if we seem unscripted, it's because we are. So Rose, like you said, speaking of like things come to you at the right time, or like, or you kind of
Yeah.
get things kind of coalesce. You said some topic has been coming up for you that you said lots of
Yeah.
clients, lots of people in your life. So do you want to start by sharing what that is? What's coming up?
Yeah. So what I noticed coming up a lot is this sense of feeling like needing to accomplish, wanting to set accountability and support standards to get to where we want to be. And this is for me too. I have this commitment that I've made way back in the summer to walk. Like I want to be a daily walker, and I've made this commitment to walk at least 5 times a week. And I'm noticing as I'm feeling really low energy this week, I don't have the energy to get all of the things done that I need to get done and go for the walk. And so it's been a real internal conversation about what gives, what do I
Mhm.
compromise on, and what is most important right now, and what does that mean about my identity. Like I've decided that this commitment that I'm in with this walking it's no longer just a commitment, it's now a part of my identity. I am a person who walks regularly. That's just part of how I live my life now. And so in the past, it would have been this conversation about, is that identity no longer valid? What does it mean if I skip 3 days this week of walking, or if I don't walk for, multiple days in a row? Does it mean that I'm no longer a walker? Does it mean that I'm no longer a person of integrity or a person capable of keeping my commitments? And so what I've recognized, and part of this was from being able to be still enough to ask myself these questions, being able to be quiet enough to notice the internal conversation and impulses
Yeah.
and sensations, was that my system was asking for rest. And maybe there
Mhm.
are ways to still honor the commitment in a different way. And to recognize that over the course of the year, if I have one week where I walked 4 days or 3 days,
Yeah.
it doesn't make me a non-walker
Yeah.
or a person that doesn't care about my well-being. Um, it just means that there's room to honor all parts and
Yeah.
various needs. And so, and
Yeah.
that's always a tricky conversation for me, right? Because it's easy to get into making excuse for those of us that are building new habits, making excuses to not do the thing that's uncomfortable,
Yeah. So then you feel
right?
bad, but you feel bad not walking because that's your commitment. And you're like, I'm going
Yeah.
to be the person who follows through on my new habit. And so there's that inner resistance, it sounds like. But then
Mhm.
you had said that you got quiet and still. So that's like
Yeah.
coming into presence
Yep.
and checking in. And you said there was like feelings and sensations that
Mhm.
helped give you a clue like, what I need now is rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you explain more about, because, as we're getting in touch with our bodies, not everyone has, like, how do you listen? How did you know you needed rest?
Well, I think this is a big learning process, right? And so there's lots of little steps that I've taken to start to notice sensation in my body. And perhaps in this conversation, I can share one small entry point that might help. But because I'm in these practices of, part of it is meditation. I know that seems like meditation is such a weird word sometimes. Like, what does that mean? How do we do it? I can't do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I've had all of those conversations with myself. And I'll admit that I am not 100%. That's another area that I am a regular meditator. That is part of my identity now, but it's not daily. It's not
Yeah.
every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's part of it, is just being able, like we did at the beginning of this episode, just taking a moment to breathe into your heart and notice what that does, how that feels. How is that
Yeah.
different from the way that you normally breathe?
Yeah. So like,
Right?
what did you pick up on in your body that you're like, this is my cue that I need to rest?
Well, so I've been just feeling really low energy, and I think that's a
Yeah. Okay.
one that most of us can relate to. And
Yeah.
sometimes exercising when we're low energy is the thing that we need to bring us back up. But
But if you're sick,
yeah, and looking at, how is this different than normal low
yeah.
energy, or what
Yeah.
do I have on my plate today?
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm in a regular habit now, knowing how much energy it takes me to get through the things that I'm doing in my day, that's a big part of it. So part of it is strategic and cognitive, and part of it is
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling more depleted. When I think about the part of it too, is I have these hard tasks that I needed to get done, that are challenging
Mm-hmm.
for me, that I
Mm-hmm.
tend to want to avoid and put off. And so it would have been very easy for me to say, I'm going to go for my walk. That's my commitment.
Yeah.
And
Instead
then
of getting
not
to the other competing to-dos in your life that we
right,
all
right.
have.
And yeah. And
Yeah.
so that was part of it, is noticing that I had this impulse, not necessarily to want to go walk, but I had this impulse to want to avoid doing the hard thing that I needed to do.
Mhm.
And knowing why those things are important and why those are also a commitment for me.
Mm.
Sometimes it comes down to, what can I fit in the day and how am I going to feel,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
noticing, as I thought about, if I get this thing done, what does that feel like? And just visualizing for just a moment, what does it feel like to get this task done? What does
Mhm.
it feel like? Now I'm going to envision I've gone for the walk and I haven't gotten this thing done. What does that feel like?
Yeah.
And so that brought up a little bit of an emotional reaction for me. And
Yeah.
as much as I wanted to avoid the hard thing that I wasn't doing, I noticed a huge sense of relief. And again, that softening, that bigger spaciousness. I felt
Mhm.
proud of myself, accomplished.
Mm.
There was a little bit of like celebratory energy, and just a sense of release and relief. Whereas
Yeah.
going for the walk felt good, it felt
Yeah.
nurturing. And then
Yeah.
immediately the anxiety started to like creep, the tension started to creep back
Yeah.
in. And
Yeah.
so those are some of the cues that I look for.
Yeah. So it sounds like you brought in even more than just like, does your body need to rest? Like you went into like, what are my multiple competing commitments and what do I show up for today when I basically have too much on my plate?
Yeah.
Which is that same sensing in to like, I love that, like imagining what would it feel like if I accomplished this? What would it feel like if I went for the walk and didn't? That's just such an easy thing to do with such a clear answer usually. Like you said, if you went for a walk and didn't get that stuff down, you'd feel anxious. But then if you got those things accomplished, you would feel accomplished and good and know that you can walk tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a day-to-day thing. But the other thing, you're talking about like you're starting to get sick and
Mm-hmm.
going into, like, do I need to rest or not? Because I am sick. So I'm drinking tea. If you see the live like camera version of this, I'm drinking tea. My voice is kind of gravelly, so I apologize, but I have a cough, and that's what I've been balancing is the rest. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do I know when I need to rest? Because I'm kind of a go, go, go person. I have a lot, things I want to do and activities that I'm doing. And then it's like hearing you talk, I was wondering like how would I answer that question? Like
Yeah.
how would I know like when I need to rest or not? Because I feel like I've done a pretty good job over the last few weeks. But at the same time, I've still like done activities. So I'm like kind of right on that perfect balance. I'm trying to like reflect in real
Mm-hmm.
time, like what was really helping me. And I think I was like resting just enough, getting present and still in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and resting just enough. Like I'd go to bed early. Like I was like, oh, I should take a bath to help me. Like I take an Epsom salt bath to help work out some of the cold or the sickness. But I was like, I'm just too tired. Like I'm just going to straight go to bed and listening to that I needed sleep rather than kind of marching forward with that automatic patterning of like, I should do this and I should do that. And then I canceled something this week with a friend that I told her, like, oh, yeah, let's meet. We had plans to do it. And then an hour before, I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I am just too sick to like keep like, I really wanted to see her. But it's just that balancing it. And it is, I think, my ability to cultivate presence over time that I
Mm-hmm.
can keep dropping into those moments of stillness. But it's like my moving forward kind of action mode and not always being present because just always we talk about present doesn't mean
Yeah.
Rosal and I are like the present queens, we're always in the
No,
present moment.
we're
We both
still,
get yeah, right, we still have the inner voice and what we're thinking about in the future and the past. And so I
yeah.
think it's just regular check-ins. Once you like keep practicing over and over, I just automatically would check in once in a while and be like, okay. And it's about intentionally choosing. Is that a good way to put
Yeah,
it?
I think it is. And I think I'm curious. So I'm glad that you brought up that yes, we are focused on helping people cultivate presence and we're still human. We're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
working with this for ourselves. I think that's an important distinction. But a couple of things you said there that are I think important and I'm curious to maybe explore more is the word should came up. And for me that's always a clear
Yeah.
indication of that's maybe my mind trying to
Yeah.
dictate what I should do or should.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the thing that's best for me that my whole system would say is the most supportive or right path. So that feels like a clear distinction when you can start to
Mhm.
question. But the other part
Mhm.
was the want. I really wanted to see this friend. And
Yeah.
so that's where it gets a little murkier for me. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about
Mm.
how you distinguish between two things that
Yeah.
you feel you need or really want and where does
Yeah.
that should come in and how do you navigate that?
Yeah. I think over time, I mean, good question. And I think, going back to that, like I even paused to even consider rather than just marching forward because I have plans, because that's what I would have done a few years ago. I would have just automatically, like, because I'm a person who wants to fulfill my obligations. I'm, like I always show up when I say I'm going to show up, and I'm that kind of person. And what's what drove my behavior. But
Mm,
then I was like always overextending myself, and I was
yeah.
exhausted. I'd like go, go, go until I would like get sick to the point where I'd have to like lay in bed for a few days or something.
Mm,
And so it's that I paused and I really felt into my body, kind of what you were saying earlier. Like I sensed the sensation, like the feeling in my chest, how completely like exhausted and tired I was. I had to get a few more things ready for a trip I was going on. And it was back to those competing priorities that I was like, I know I have to do these couple things for this trip. And I would love to see her, but I only have energy for, like, I kind of check in with my energy levels. And I'm like, I only have energy for one of these two things. And I really like to be able to leave on time with my family. I'd have to like commit to doing, like, finishing packing the food. So it's really about checking in. And I think that is like a learned skill over time that I didn't have that barometer in
Yeah,
my
neither did I.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, go fulfill my obligations, do what I think, like externally focused. But this presence of like even noticing what's happening with my body and that heart thing at the beginning that you led, Rosala, that is like, that's what we're talking about, right? Is like, it's as easy. It's not mysterious. It's like breathing and feeling your body. And you can tell like, oh, I'm exhausted, or, oh, I have a lot of energy, or now I have more energy. You know, it's not some mysterious, like, what is that? It's literally just like pausing for a moment and checking in. How does your body feel? And being
Yeah.
honest with yourself.
That's true. One thing I want to maybe take a sidebar if it's okay, because I know that there are people that say, yes, you say it's easy, but I don't feel anything. I don't notice what's in my body. And so I thought it might be helpful to just share really briefly a quick, easy tool that might be helpful for if you feel like you aren't sure what you're sensing or don't feel anything.
Yeah.
A quick, easy way to begin to tap into this. And I got this from, I believe from Peter Levine, who is the founder of somatic experiencing. And so what we're going to do, we're just going to use our hands. And part of the reason that we often will use hands when we begin, and Ellen, you used hands last time too, when we begin to start to work on sensing and working into the body, is because not everybody feels entirely safe or connected. And so the hands are usually one of the more neutral places. And so you can expand this to any other part of your body you want, but we're going to start with hands. And just take your hand and hold your palm out, just in a relaxed place. And if you're watching, you can see what I'm doing, but you're just going to hold your palm out in a relaxed state. Take your other hand, doesn't matter which is which, and just tap the fingertips into the palm of the other hand. And just do that for, 5 or 10 seconds. And then stop. And put your attention in the palm of your hand and notice what you're feeling. Is there any kind of tingling, movement of any kind? You notice tension there? Is there a difference of temperature in your palm than the rest of your hand? Did you notice a temperature change with your fingers touching your hand? Right, so that's a way that you can begin to just notice that you can feel sensation. I'm willing to bet that everybody who participated felt something when those fingers were tapping, or even when they stopped tapping, there's residual. And so that's sensation in your body. And you can try that you can do that little exercise with any part of your body. And then you can start to notice, oh, there are sensations happening when I'm not tapping. There is blood and lymph and like electric energy moving through your body constantly. And the more we start to pay attention to that, the more you'll start to notice those sensations. And that's what we're talking about. That's a big part of the, becoming more present, is this stillness we're talking about today, and the noticing.
Back to that definition of presence that I was working with that from Amanda Blake, that like presence is noticing yourself and the other at the same time. And part of that noticing yourself and noticing if you need rest is like, and you could do like energy level. How's your energy level? How's your temperature? Like you said, there's different temperatures in your body, or maybe you're warm in one place and cold in another place. It's probably telling you something. And so, even if you can't describe it with words, sometimes I'm just like, what's the sense I get? Like I'm a sense, like I sense that my energy is low, but I wouldn't be able to describe any specific part of my body when I say that, except for I'm like, ugh, like I can kind of describe it in noises. But another thing, related to what you said about the tapping, like I could feel it when I was tapping for sure. And then when I let go, I could feel it for a little while. And then I started losing sensation there. But the tapping made me think of the hand on the heart and feeling your heartbeat. Because I remember that being something about like people think, can you feel your heartbeat in your body? Like only like 30% of the population can, or something naturally.
Right.
But I had to do it where I put my hand on my heart and felt my heartbeat and just feeling my chest rise and fall. Like with this
Mm-hmm.
cold, I can't take as big of breaths.
Mm-hmm.
So I can feel under my hand with my hand on my heart that I'm like, whoa, I'm barely breathing here. Like I'm not taking like, even when I try and take a deep
Yeah.
breath, I'm like, it's still hardly moving. So I think that hand on the heart thing too that you led in the beginning, that both of those are like what can you feel under your
Yeah.
hand when your hand's on your heart? And what's there is like an exploration. I
And
like
that feels
that
like
one.
such an obvious thing. Oh, I'm barely breathing. And sometimes it takes slowing down,
Oh
getting
yeah.
still,
Yeah.
and intentional like a intentional placement of attention. Like,
Yeah.
what am I experiencing? Like we
Yeah.
we just go through our day. We don't think about our breathing,
Yeah. I was going to say,
right?
what portion of the US population do you think? I mean, I'm just talking about Western, what we know here. I would say a very low percentage of us like really know how we're breathing.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that when with my clients, when I say, like breathe into your belly and just we go over diaphragmatic breathing kind of in
Mm-hmm.
the beginning to know what you can breathe like and what your body's designed to breathe like. And then I share that like most Americans like breathe just into their shoulders and just
Mm-hmm.
like tight, shallow. Almost every time people are like, really?
Mm-hmm.
Really? And then once it's in your awareness, you're like, oh my gosh, that's totally right. We only breathe into this tiny part of our chest, which triggers the stress response from our brains and bodies. So, like, what is it like to breathe down into your belly?
Yeah.
And what if we noticed how we breathe? Like, that's another thing with presence is noticing how you breathe, how you
Mm-hmm.
are breathing is a cue into
Yeah.
naturally, like, what is my current state?
Yeah, that's another big. And so you use the word diaphragmatic breathing, which really means
Yeah.
just breathing down into your belly. And we
Thank you.
will offer a practice
Thank
to
you.
help you orient to this. But yeah, I think you're right. Even just noticing what's happening with my breath, and not
Mhm.
necessarily. So there are two ways you can work with this. And again, we'll do this as a practice before we close out today. But noticing what's happening with my breath now, like I'm not trying to change it, just what is it doing? That can be
Mhm.
information about what
Yeah.
state you're in and what you might need right now.
Yeah. That is a really good what I always forget to emphasize in the beginning about presence, that it's not about changing.
Right.
Because a lot of us associate it with like, oh, we want to meditate so we can be calm, or
Yeah.
we want to take
Right.
deeper breaths so we can be calm. But presence is about being with what is,
Right.
not changing what is, but
Right.
being with what is, sitting with what is, getting curious about what is, and then
Yeah.
learning from that.
Right. Because that's how actual sustainable changes developed.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be able to accept what it is now in order to change it.
Yeah.
So
And to,
so it will move. It's not just sit here in whatever misery. I'm sitting here as
yeah.
a ball of tension and I'm just going to sit here and be tense. That's not it either.
But
But
that it could feel like that
it
depending
could.
on what you're going through.
Yes.
Like I think about, I work a lot with my clients on conflict and managing conflict.
Mhm.
And having your own presence in a conflict situation and maintaining like presence for the group, that
Mm.
you're not like there's a vibe in the group, right? If someone's
Yeah.
multiple people are angry in the group, it kind of gets everybody like,
Yeah.
oh, like they go into protection mode. But if you can maintain your own presence and sit with the discomfort, it's a way of like, presence as a way of being, that you have
Right.
your way of being. And then you can send that out into the group, because just like that angry person can influence the group. If you are a calm sense, if you have a centered way of being, and you like put your like hand on your heart, or you just do that breathing for a second, you become more calm. You can send that out to the group.
Yeah. 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 And this is maybe another topic for another day, but that's not just a woo woo thing. That's, a scientifically backed
Yeah.
phenomenon because
Yeah.
we are electric beings. We're sending out electrical impulses that people can feel. And that comes from how coherent our heart and our mind is or not.
Yeah.
Right. If we're in chaos internally, then it's gonna,
People can feel
send.
that vibe.
Yeah.
And just like we've all felt it, that's why I like describing it as like a vibe, just like the angry person in a meeting or the
Yeah.
person who's like sitting back, not talking and kind of like stonewalling. Like you can feel that, like, or your
Yeah.
partner is doing that, or you're doing it to your
Yeah.
partner. They can feel it. So that's all
Yeah.
we're talking about is that you can
Yeah.
sense the vibe. And I call it like radical self responsibility, like being responsible for your own vibe.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to send out an uneasy, angry vibe or a frustrated vibe to affect the other people in the room or on the Zoom? Or do I
Mhm.
want to like, so this is what's been coming up for me this week. Can I transition to that?
Yeah.
This is like a
Please.
clear
Yeah.
transition to it. Is that that's what I've been thinking about is like me, like my vibe and what am I sending out? And a lot of times, for clients and for people that I work with, I'm there to hold the space, right? Like,
Mhm.
as a coach, Rose, like we
Yeah.
hold the space for people. And Rose and I were actually taught that explicitly in our coaching program of how to hold space and what to put out into what they call the relational field. But it's just that vibe. What vibes are you sending out?
Mhm.
So create possibility or create expansion or openness, so then whoever else is in the room, like they can feel their feelings and aren't
Mhm.
impacted by yours. So what I have come to, because I also am a meditator, which kind of I don't always do it every day, and I'm not like the 20 minutes or the hour kind of person. Like I'm always like, oh, one day maybe I'll be that person. I've thought that for like 15 years. But anyway, but really finding like, and then when you're in meditation, everyone always has thoughts. And so what I've been coming to this week during my meditations is just surrendering to the stillness that's within. So it's more like a surrendering to it rather than trying to create it. Like, okay, is this stillness?
Mm.
Can I create this feeling of stillness?
Mhm.
It's a process for me of surrendering to it and then
Yeah.
sitting in it. And then if a thought comes up, I just label it thought and then I return to that stillness. And the more I revisited that stillness, like that's my inner peace. That's my inner sense of calm. And I've also been
Yeah.
thinking about it in terms of what's going on in the world. And all of us are like, kind of helpless. Like, what can we do? What can we do? Some like horrible things are happening.
Yeah.
And finding my own stillness and sense of peace inside and kind of expanding that out is like, that's the vibe I'm putting out
Mm.
is something I feel like I can do. Like I feel like that is making an impact somehow, or I feel like I am taking action in a way by
Yeah.
cultivating my own stillness and sense of peace. And it's,
Yeah.
totally related to presence because presence is, I think we talked about this before we started recording, is like slowing down. You need to slow down to find presence, and you can slow down by any kind of mindful, like mindful eating or mindful walking or anything that's going to help you slow. And I think when you come into presence, the other thing is that you feel slower, even though
Mhm.
like things
Mhm.
around you could be happening just as quickly,
Yeah.
but things, my
Yeah.
perception every of time like kind of expands. So I feel more spaciousness
Yeah.
when I'm fully present.
And
Does
it's
that?
almost, yeah, it does. It's almost like you have more time, even though you're
Mhm.
moving more slowly because
Yeah.
suddenly the time just feels more expansive. I've
Yeah.
noticed. Yeah. Um, another, probably a lot of our listeners will know, but another phrase that you just used that I want to expand on before we continue
Thank you
is
for catching
is
me.
the mindful eating, mindful walking, doing
Yeah.
anything
Oh, yeah.
mindfully. And what that really just means is to pay exquisite attention. So
Going
it,
slow.
yeah, yeah, probably slow because it takes slowing down to notice the
Mhm.
level of detail, but you're really going to pay attention to the detail as you eat. You're going to take in the aroma of the food. You're going
Yeah.
to notice the texture and all of the flavors, all of the nuance. You're going to notice the muscles in your jaw as they chew and what that mechanism is. So it's just really paying really detailed attention to your internal world and to your external.
Yeah. So the first time I did mindful eating, you just totally reminded me that I was like, why do I even want to do this?
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting there chewing my food really slow and tasting, the grape or the raisin. I think it was in the
Mm-hmm.
texture. And I was like, the whole time I was like, okay, I don't even like, why do I even like, how is this helping me in any way? And then for me, it got that mindful walking of walking really slowly and feeling my feet, my heel touch the floor and then my toes. And then it was like a gateway into presence. Maybe that's what I needed to slow down, is walking really slowly. And then I became more aware of what's going on around me. Because that's just a perfect analogy of like you're speeding through time, like your life, your fast paced life, moving through life. So then everything else kind of goes by you. And the whole like stop and smell the roses idea, that literally when I walked slower, so many more things came into my awareness. And I was aware of trees and appreciation and gratitude, and all these new emotions came into my life that I valued. Versus when I was doing the mindful eating, I'm like, I don't value anything about this experience. So just bringing in, some people might love mindful eating, and so like that might just to give another way in.
And I think we do all resonate differently, and maybe differently at different times too, right? Like if you tried so my first experience with the mindful eating was in a workshop where a woman brought in 2 Hershey Kisses for each participant and asked us to eat the first very mindfully. So we took in the aroma of the chocolate. We let it sit on our tongue and melt without chewing it for a very long time. And then, so it was the whole experience. And I think it probably took us 10 or 15 minutes to eat 1 Hershey's Kiss. And then she asked, who would like the second one? No one. And how often do we just eat a whole bag of M&Ms without thinking about it? Because we're not actually experiencing.
We're not present.
The sensation of what so I agree. Most of the time when I do mindful eating, it's not as effective.
To get the point across.
The walking does tend to be a little bit more effective for me, but I think it can't, depending on where you are in your life or what you're experimenting with, there's lots of doorways in.
Yes.
There's lots of ways. And we'll, over the course of this podcast, we'll experiment with working with all of the sensations mindfully and different invitations to get into that. So,
so what you said about the Hershey's Kiss. So I heard it's appreciation, you can really appreciate. And there's studies out there that when we do eat our food, the first 2 bites, we have appreciation and we're actually tasting what it is. And every additional bite afterwards is because we're paying less attention, I think.
Right. Yeah.
I think don't quote me on that, but that's my assumption of why the first few bites are something we recognize. In talking about that with food is that, if we savored the savoring of things, because it goes back to my walking, is that then I was savoring what was happening around me. I was savoring my walks. And I'll also walk every morning, I'll disclose that. So Rosa, I might reference walking on a regular basis.
Yeah. And it's interesting for me, this is maybe another tangent, but that savoring on the walk. So I'm noticing how I am. It's also allowed me, and this was an invitation I heard on another podcast, but to orient to the little tiny things that delight me.
Yeah. Cool.
Which is a whole other sensation that I think a lot of us struggle to really embody joyfulness.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just little tiny things, seeing a blue jay, right? Because I hear them around me all the time, but I rarely see them. And they're delightful to me. I just think they're aesthetically very pleasing. And so, and I'll pause and say the word delight. And I let myself savor that feeling of delight, which is another gateway, I think, into that sense of awe, that sense of appreciation of beauty, the sense of possibility, right? It's just a silly little bird, but, or a little flower, or, whatever it is, something that I heard that is,
So
anyway.
I'd love, so you just said awe and delight and all of those things. So another reason or another way presence is relevant to our lives is our own happiness. Because when you feel awe and wonder, think about the last time you were on a vacation or on your favorite hike or somewhere in nature that you were just had that awe feeling. You were present in the moment. I think that is some of my clients that I've worked with, that sometimes that's the only bits of presence that they have gotten because they have such high paced lives, are these little glimpses. So then they can't wait to go back to that place, or, whatever, that because that awe and wonder brings them into the present moment and they can take that in. So it's like, how do we bring it more into our everyday lives? So I want to offer an invitation. Rosala and I, when we work with our clients do field work in between sessions. And I would love to offer an optional fieldwork exercise if anybody wanted to take it on and do a walk, like go on a walk. It can just be once if you want, but go slower and just try and be present. Notice what's around you. Like Rosala's your thing. Like find delight. Like look at the bird. Look, I look like squirrels. Their tails are just so poofy. And I'm like, oh, that's cute, or whatever. And you say delight out loud. So say delight out loud, or just notice the things around you. So walk a little slower, and it actually helps you lower your cortisol levels if you walk slowly. So if you have any stress in your life, slowly walking will help you with that. Would you add anything to that, Rosala?
I would say, if possible, if you have access, I would recommend, the invitation I would extend would be to try to take this walk where there's nature available or around you. And yeah, I would say maybe notice not just what you're noticing, but what do you tend to notice the things that you are seeing? Are you excluding sounds? Do you notice, are you noticing the muscles in your feet and ankles and calves and glutes as you're walking? Or, are you noticing any internal sensation? Are you getting caught up in a mind swirl of thoughts about all these things?
Yeah.
And can you choose to shift your attention back to some of the sensory experiences? That would be part of the invitation from me.
Yeah.
I love this invitation.
Yeah. Hearing that, a lot of times I love feeling like the breeze, or what, like I'm sensing the weather on my skin. Like, is it cool? Is it breezy? Is it a warm? Is there fog? That's something when I'm present, I can notice. And when I'm not present, I just, totally don't notice at all. I could go for an entire walk and be stuck in my head.
Yeah.
But the invitation, the nature thing, I always want to remove barriers. I literally walk outside my front door and walk around the block. And there is so much there that you can notice. So if you don't have access to nature, or you feel like, oh, then I could, if you put things off. You ever do that where you're like,
yes, I
put up
do.
things like, oh, I've got to do that. So then like you never end up doing it.
I will go to the park next week. Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever works, try some slow walking, see what you notice. And what I said earlier about when I was meditating, that when I have a thought come in, I just label it thought.
Yeah.
And then keep noticing, so like that's the same in like when you're saying delight about something. So instead of going on a story in your head, oh, the last time I saw a blue jay, and then, oh, I remember when these blue jays used to fight at my parents, like to just be like blue jay, delight, or that, and then like go back to noticing. Yeah. Cool. Anything else that we haven't talked about that's like been on your mind?
Oh, there's always tons that come up, but I feel like in this conversation, I feel like we've I'm feeling like, I think we talked about all this stuff that's been coming up.
I thought of one thing.
Okay.
I thought about like what brings us into presence and what pulls us out of presence.
Yeah.
Is just as like to look at, I like always looking at two sides of the coin. So coming into presence is like the noticing, but like what pulls us out of presence, which could be an entire episode,
that could be,
right?
It could be.
And I know I'm bringing it up here towards the end, but just to like talk about, Rose and I were talking about before this, is like, like when you're sick, like if you think you're getting sick and you only have so much energy, and you could do this, or you could do, like, are you going to zone out and watch like binge Netflix, or are you going to get those few things done that were really meaningful to you?
Yeah. And I think, and you're right. I think this
is that how we brought it up, or is that how we were?
Yeah, I think a little bit. And I think this might be a bigger topic that we might discuss in a little bit more detail again in the future. But one of the things that occurred to me as I was thinking about this part of it is, so many of us, and myself included, and I was just having this conversation with a friend, that we think that we're resting when what we're actually doing is avoiding or numbing.
Yeah.
And so this part, so that might be a way that you're looking at what going out of presence and how, like, what is actual restorative deep rest, deep non-sleep rest. And
Yeah.
there are there's a TED article that I have seen a number of times that talks about specifically 7 different kinds of rest, and we can link that in the notes, below this. But that's something that maybe we want to get into a little bit further in the future. But I think for now, just an invitation to notice when you feel like you're depleted and you're needing to rest. Is it scrolling social media? Is it binging Netflix? And is that serving you? Are you
Is that,
feeling
yeah.
more rested from doing that or not?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because
So,
we're not here to
yeah.
moralize or judge the
Yeah.
behavior. We're
No.
here to say, how is it serving
Yeah.
what your true need is?
Yeah. Can I share an
Right?
example?
Yes, please.
Especially of like not villainizing the binging TV sometime
Yeah.
when you need to rest.
Yeah.
Because so I've been sick for a few weeks, so I had some practice. So sometimes during the day, where I don't want to sleep because I want to sleep good at night, but I really don't feel like I can have energy to putz around. Like I'll end up like doing laundry or doing, I'll just walk around and do random things. So to help myself relax, I like can lay on the couch and like watch shows. And I did that for like a half a day. I just laid there and watched shows, and it was just the rest I needed. I really let my body relax. But then on the other hand, in the evenings where I was like, oh, I've been wanting to watch this show, watch a show before I go to bed or something, or after dinner. And I was like, should I stay up and watch a show after dinner, or am I exhausted and I'd be better served if I just went to bed? Like before I told gave the example of taking a bath or going to bed. In the same week, my decision was, should I watch this show, or because I had already watched some of it earlier and I wanted to keep watching it, or should I go to bed?
Yeah.
And going to bed, I just like felt in my body, like, oh my God, that is going to help me. Like I'm going to feel better tomorrow because I still have full days of things to do. So it's like, how do I show up tomorrow? Because that's what mattered most to me, is how was I going to show up the next day for the things that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
So I slept instead of watched Netflix. But then, so it's like taking
love
the time to pause and actually consider what is best in that moment. Because it's not always the same.
And I love that example of, taking the time and notice, what do I need here? And what of these options is going to serve that? And one time it was binging television. So that can be a good answer.
Yeah.
But
So
thank you for that.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know if we've really introduced this yet, that we in every episode are going to do a guided centering at the end of every one of our episodes to kind of send you off into your day. And so you have a guided experience of presence and becoming still, or just being with what is. It's any experience you have with the guided centering is your experience, and you can value that and, explore it and stay curious about what's happening with you. More of the like, let's just check in with ourselves. So this is an opportunity at the end of every single episode going forward today and going forward. Rose and I are going to take turns doing it. And today Rosela is going to guide us in a centering that I'm super excited, because I just find your centerings so you're just so craftful and present. Like your inner stillness and vibe like really hits me and like helps me find it too.
Oh, well, thank you for that. So for today, being that we're talking a lot about stillness and rest and diaphragmatic breathing and mindfulness, I thought what I might do is just guide us all in just a little moment of stillness and mindfulness. And so we're going to maybe sometimes be a little unorthodox in the way that we conduct our podcast, and that there might be some dead air. And that's an invitation for you to really be present with yourself and curious and really pay attention to what you're experiencing and what's happening. So for today, if you're in a place, of course, if you're driving or doing something in public that would make
Don't close your eyes. Don't close your eyes. You can do it in public, maybe.
You can do it in public, but just take your surroundings into consideration and do what is safe for you. But I'm going to invite you to
Or press pause and get to a safe place.
Yes.
How about that? Pull over on the side of the road, somewhere safe. Okay.
Yeah, either thing will work, but I'm going to invite you, and you can do this, moving or with eyes open today, but I'm going to invite you to just sort of settle in. If you're seated or standing, just kind of get still. If you're seated, or if you can sit, I'll invite you to sit. And once again, just let your body weight sink into your chair and just get reasonably comfortable. Let yourself be held by the chair. And either invite you to close your eyes if that feels supportive, or just soften your gaze and allow yourself to not really be focused on anything but your experience right now. And then just take a moment to notice your breath without trying to change anything. Just noticing right now. Are you breathing through your nose, your mouth, both? And where do you notice the air dropping into? Does it stop at the bottom of your throat? Does it move into your chest? Can you feel your shoulders rising and falling? Is your belly moving at all? Is the sensation one of pulling the breath in and pushing it out? Does the breath feel like it's happening to or through you? What are you noticing? Where do you feel tension in your body right now? Where do you feel space and ease and relaxation? Now I'm going to invite you to be just a little bit more intentional. So if you can, just maybe take any little movements that you might need to release any tension that you might have in your shoulders. Maybe give them a couple swirls around, or pull them up and let them drop. Let yourself really sink into your seat. Feel your feet fully on the floor. Notice all 10 toes. Come back to your breath. See if you can, as you relax your shoulders down and back, and let your chest open a little, lining your head over your heart. See if you can allow the breath to sort of just fall into your system. If you can, breathe through your nose. Without forcing, just gently allowing the air to flow in and flow out. Seeing if you can notice the sensation of the air moving through your nostrils. Maybe noticing a temperature change as it does. And inviting your breath, if you can, all the way down into your belly. So just soften those ab muscles and let your belly expand front to back, and maybe even side to side, as much as you can. Noticing if you have any thoughts about challenge here, or how well you're doing with this, and just label that thought and let it go. Notice if you're labeling anything as uncomfortable. Again, label that thought and let it go. Come back to the breath. Again, just allowing it to sink in. And if it's still being stopped in your chest, just notice that. And see if you can invite it maybe 5% deeper. Maybe not all the way into your belly today. And notice what that experience is like. Just continuing to allow the breath to come in and out. Maybe again, orienting to your heart space and allowing the breath to move in and out of your heart. Maybe letting your jaw relax down, the roof of your mouth relax up. And maybe letting the corners of your lips relax into a slight smile. And when you're ready, you can bring your attention back up to your surroundings and open your eyes. And just take this, notice what might be different now. Notice what you experienced and see if there's room for curiosity about anything that you experienced today. Notice where there might have been judgment and see if you can let that go and invite more curiosity. And with that, I will thank you for being with us today, and I guess turn it back over to sign off.
Thank you so much, Rosala. That I feel amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your partnership, and thank all of you for being with us and joining us in this experiment and in cultivating our presence together.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for listening. We want to hear from you. Drop us a comment on what you'd like to hear more about or questions you may have. We value your input and we'll work those topics into future episodes.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, like, subscribe, and leave a rating and review. It will go a long way in helping us spread the word about the Presence Hour podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.